is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning into another episode of the Barry and Mack Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports performance coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing today on this game week, D-Mac?
Game week, baby. It's time to play ball, man. We got 3 days and then we got to show up. Temples are good. First edition of, seeing what these guys have to offer. But we got to wrap up fall camp. You know what I'm saying? You and I made we made some assessments, some professional assessments on what we felt the position groups would look like, who our potential starters would look like. I got to say it because I'm petty. There are some folks in the comments of what we were discussing who were vehemently against what we said, and we were kind of right in most instances. And so, be fun to talk about that stuff. But getting ready to play ball, man. We saw some things that I think we can discuss in terms of having a championship culture. Will speak to some players whose willingness to be flexible and be team guys, I think is going to be a huge value add to the team this season. And I'm just excited to be a fan. I'm excited to break down games. I'm excited to forecast what we think is going to happen. I'm excited to weed and nerd out in the X's and O's of what happened on Saturday and try to explain it to people in layman's terms. Man, let's go, man. Barry and Mack show, baby. OU Insider. Appreciate those guys for taking good care of us. But I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this loud and proud, and this is gonna put pressure on us. Barry, this is for me and you, but I'm saying this to all of our listeners. We about to create some damn content. Let's go out there and let's crush the content. I wanna continue to deliver content to the fans and the individuals. Thank you guys for the dope comments, the dope reviews. 3 years in, man, and people are still feeling what we bring to the table. So grateful for you. I'm excited to be a Sooner alum and fan. And shit, it's time to play ball, man. Let's go get it. Yeah, let's go get it.
Yeah. Do thank you guys for all the reviews. We've had a lot more reviews here lately. The exposure is coming up, and we appreciate that. If you guys want to be able to hit some questions, I'm going to ask a couple questions today. Me and DMAC are going to go back and forth from some of the members on the OU Insider board. If you're on the board, go over there, ask your questions. If not, go sign up. Brandon Parker and the guys, as the season rolls in, it's going to be the best content around. And the Barry and Mack Show, as always, though, it's going to stay free. It's going to stay for the Sooner Nation. And it is a fun thing that we get to do. But D-Mac, let's start unraveling fall camp. We're going to start offensive side of the ball first. Not really a surprise at the quarterback position, save Michael Hawkins. But we talked a little bit about him and Casey. That could have gone either way, and maybe in some instances they do play Casey because of seniority, because they don't need Mike. Like, there's a lot of things, a lot of ways to massage that and to play that scenario. Gavin Sawchuk, firmly entrenched as the number one. You've got Javonte Barnes, who did creep up, seems to have had a good fall camp. I'm still a little bit wait and see just because of that foot. Live bullets sometimes are a little different than practice bullets. But we did see that Nick Anderson still going to be a big player over there at receiver. Deion Burks, Andrell Anthony, a lot of the same names there. I want to go to offensive line, though, because this is what you said.
Of course you do.
We're going to be just a smidge petty. And I want to run through the starting lineup here. We're going to start right to left. So we're going to start starting right guard, and not any ors right here, or starting right tackle. We're going to go Jake Taylor, or Spencer Brown. I think either one of those are going to be good options. Spencer brings a little bit different perspective to the position. Being a Michigan State guy, he was definitely a mauler type player at that position. Although Taylor, certainly nothing to sneeze at in that regard. At right guard, Fabechi Nwewu. Hopefully, I nailed the name down. At center, one that I called pretty early in the offseason. I know a lot of people said Josh Bates is probably going to be his time. OU went out and got Branson Hickman out of SMU. I'm telling you guys right now, Hickman is going to be a fan favorite. This is my prediction by the end of the season. Hickman is going to be one of those fan favorite offensive linemen by the end of the year. We're going to skip over left guard just for a second and go left tackle. We got Michael Tarkin out there with a guy who just right behind him, who I've been talking about, I think will develop into a big piece. He's a player who, when he came to Oklahoma, I said he's a project. He's going to take some time, but I thought he had the best feet and I thought he had the best length, and that was Logan Howland. I think Logan has some serious room to continue growing, and maybe he overtakes Tarkin in the middle of the year. But let's talk about left guard, D-Mac. Can you tell Sooner Nation who is the starting left guard, and then maybe unpack the why? I know we're being a little petty, having some fun, but also unpack probably what's behind that in terms of what Beatonbows may be thinking.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, and by the way, right, pat yourself on the back. And by the way, all fun, whatever, right? That who knows what's really gonna happen when the bullets start flying. But I think the premise behind the offensive line being the one true unit in football, it really is. The five hands go together and form a fist. And if you don't form a fist, then you don't have a lot of punch. And so I've just been around the program enough and experienced myself and understand, just the interworkings of an offensive line. You got to have the best five. Like that's the gig, right? Going back to my years, Howard Duncan was a tackle,
Mm.
but we had the experiment with Frank Romero and moved Frank to left tackle, and Howard comes in as a JUCO guy, and they competed for a little bit, but it just made sense. Howard was a big, strong, lower trunk bender, a knee bender, and it just made sense to stack him next to Frank, and now you've got a strong left side. And so when you have a guy like Sexton, who they have as the starting, I think the left guard, right? He's left
Starting
guard.
left guard, yeah.
Yeah, it just makes sense that, hey, if you got three tackles, if you have one that has the flexibility to spin down and be a guard and have the base to be strong enough to move people, he's still your depth at tackle. Like, it doesn't hurt him. He still has the flexibility. We talked about this. If he were going to the league, and this is all Beatonbow had to say to him, son, when it's time to play on Sundays, assuming you kick ass at guard, the NFL teams know you can play tackle. They know you have that versatility. Some of them may even recruit you as a tackle. So that part, right? It doesn't mean the end of the world. The exact opposite of that is the kid that went to Missouri. Poor him. They threw the bag at him. They paid left tackle money for a guard. And here we are. We have a left tackle that we have enough room to move to guard where it gives us versatility. So that's called building a program correctly. That's called creating quality, really quality front line first. Let's make our front line as good as possible. But because you do that, now the guards have more competition, which is good for the guard positions. And now the tackles know if I have a bad game, we could spin Sexton out to tackle and we have enough guard depth to still have a good front. So I look at that group. I'm not surprised. I honestly am not surprised. I'm not going to make too much of a fuss about it. It's funny just because we went back and forth in the
Yeah.
comments
And
with a couple
people
people.
were adamant. They're
Oh
like,
yeah,
no
there was
freaking way.
there are a couple of know-it-alls and whatever. I
Yeah,
think I'm a know-it-all sometimes, so
for
I
sure.
salute those guys. I want
Yeah,
to be right too. Um, but no, I'm not surprised. It's good
yeah,
for the program. It's good for Sexton. He's still a younger guy. He'll
yeah,
have his day to be the man, and he understands that. He wants to win this season.
yeah.
Championship culture. By the way, that's the thing. Championship culture. We'll talk about the defensive side of the ball, where a couple of guys were willing to do the same thing too. Championship culture.
Yeah, and just to kind of carry that out a little further, it could be a scenario where you talk about the five, and this isn't, we're not there at practice. It may be where Sexton being right there is elevating Tarkin's game, right? We don't know. Maybe Tarkin, if he's got a left guard who maybe isn't an elite level athlete like a Sexton, right? Maybe that puts a little more pressure on him. Maybe the communication with the other guy who's less experienced isn't good. There's so many fine inner workings there. But if you can take as many good athletes as you have and your top guys and put them on your front in whatever combination that it is, and then also having a guy like Tarkin, who is a transfer, who has had flashes of good film, but also had some bad film in various spots. But he's a guy who you could put pressure on with a Sexton, right? If Sexton all of a sudden is all world and Tarkin's just not cutting it, man. You can slide guys down, you can slot guys in different spots. You obviously got Logan Howland, who I do think may also put some pressure on that position. And now you have a deal where Logan Howland's able to potentially flourish if the position opens up, and who knows, who's built a little more like a true left tackle, kind of that classic body type. I do want to talk a little bit about a receiver who I buried the lead a little because he had such a phenomenal fall camp. And that was a guy who we saw towards the end of last year who has been listed as a starter. It's him or Nick Anderson, with Andrell also in that other position. I think, as you kind of stated, I see there being a lot of mixing and matching with that position, a lot of shuffling and just guys in some different spots. I think there's going to be a lot of different ways to play that. But I want to talk about Brennan Thompson. Absolute speedster, needed to build his body up. That was apparent. But when you are a guy like that, D-Mac, who comes in, you're coming from Texas, you're coming from little brother, and you come into Oklahoma and you need to see that development happen and in a hurry in order for to get some playing time, right? You got to learn the system, but you got to build your body up for the SEC. What do you think it took for a guy like that? If you can kind of go inside the mindset, how was Brennan able to go from being one of the lower guys on the depth chart to really now being an entrenched starter? What do you think happened there with him and kind of his approach to stuff?
It's interesting. That whole exposition is very interesting to me. So a couple of things, right? And I think BV spoke to it. I saw some Twitter quotes from it that essentially said Brennan essentially grew in ways that the program didn't expect him to grow, meaning his ability to run routes. When you watched him in high school, he was a slant fade guy. When you watched him at Texas, he was a gadget guy getting the space. We watched him last season, and I thought we used him very effectively. I'll say one of the things Levy did very well is put him in position. We talked about being that number 2 receiver running against safeties and being able to run from open coverage. Andre Woolfolk did it for us. If you go back and watch, we had a formation called Tiger. And because I could play X and Dre could play X, I'd play X. Dre would play that inside. It was really a 3 position. And it's you in the safety, bro. And you're just running away from coverage. It's a fun position if you've got speed. And so I thought that's a phenomenal place for him. But and no, I don't think anyone who wasn't in off season, wasn't in weightlifting, wasn't in summer camp, wasn't in 7-ons, right, could forecast that Brennan would clean up his ability to run the core routes of an X receiver. X receiver really runs 5 core routes, right? X is going to run the go route 1v1. You're opposite the tight end, so you're 1-on-1 matchup. You're going to run the slant route, right? So if they got inside tech, you're running the fade or the out. They got outside tech, you're running the slant or the curl. All right. And then you got to run the under. X is going to run a ton of unders. If now you start talking about action, you're talking about the backside post, the backside over, right? You're putting other things into that package. But when you think about it, that route tree, and again, I played X, I played Z, and I played H. That route tree makes a lot of sense for Brennan. If Brennan is better than Anderson, it's going to be a problem. One thing that I was also interesting, as I said, Andrell, he doesn't give me Z vibes, right? And so, it's interesting that he still is an X, and it kind of sucks for him because Anderson kind of showed he could play X last year, and then Brennan is clearly showing that he has elevated his play. What it means is Brennan brings something to the table they don't, and I think it's just that off the line explosion.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of plays, especially early on in the year, to back people into coverage and get them off of us, where we just say, "Hey, Brennan, take a tight end split, right? Bump in 2 or 3 yards, still opposite the tight end, right? We're in the middle of the field. He just bumps in just a yard or 2, so it gives him another 2 yards inside the numbers, and just run by him. That's
what they did with Hollywood.
Like they did with Hollywood,
yeah.
like they did with Texas does with Worthy, like we used to do with Westbrook, right? You've got a guy who his first 7 steps is explosion. Anderson's a guy who can do it. Andrew's a guy who has shown he can do it, but Brennan is just it's a different caliber of explosion.
Yeah,
that's a hefty weapon to have. I still guarantee you're going to see a healthy amount of Anderson against the bigger, stronger, longer, corners where we need to win on a curl route inside on 3rd and 7, or it's 2nd and long and we need to win backside on the go route. I think Anderson's going to have a lot to say there. It's going to be interesting to see what Andrew does.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, yeah. Andrell's going to be a fascinating piece to it. But Brennan was a little bit of a surprise for me. I thought between him, Reagan's, possibly Petaway, you're talking about some of the fastest guys, on the team.
Yep.
And Brennan, though, as you said, I would say between him and Reagan's, they've got that first 7 steps that are just absolutely elite. I would say Brennan's first 3, you watch how low he gets out of that stance. He is just so explosive. And if he's put a little more wiggle into his game, if he's really strengthened that lower half, where I thought his shiftiness and his vision is what needed a little bit of work. And if he was able to improve that, which means probably improving the route tree, right? If you're able to play lower, if you're able to get in and out of cuts better, if you're able to have more balance and more stability where you're not getting knocked off your spot, you can get physical with those corners. If you can do that, you're going to be a better receiver. Let's touch a little bit on Michael Hawkins, before we move over to the other side of the ball, just what you thought about him being named back up. Everybody saw him in the spree game, looked very explosive. We heard notes through fall camp that he was probably not pushing Jackson for the starting job, as some people tried to sell it with the clickbait. I think
Sure.
we know Coach Venables better than that.
Yep.
Obviously, Coach Luttrell, he's a guy who's gonna, he likes to establish the seniority aspect and guys who have been there and learned the system. But play for play, it sounded like they were, kind of neck and neck, at least in certain practices at certain times. Talk a little bit about what that looks like for a freshman, true freshman, beating a guy out like a Casey Thompson who comes there to be the backup.
I think Casey's there for the stopgap. Um, JFA's got bruised ribs. JFA has an AC sprain, off throwing, off shoulder or something like that. He's got to sit a game or two. We've got Mizzou, we've got Auburn, right? We've got, we've got games against a quality opponent, and we need to make sure that the rails don't fall off the ship, right? By the way, I'm confident Casey will be the starter in that scenario. We've got a game or two because it gives us flexibility, right? We can give Casey a playbook like, hey, Casey, be ready for this. These 8 throws, these 8 runs, and then the week of where we need him, we put in scheme, right? Based upon coverage and things of that nature. And Casey's been in the game long enough to be able to execute that. He feels good about I like these 8 throws. I like these 8 runs. We'll add this additional layers, right? 3 or 4 plays, and we'll build upon that at the game. Casey, job well done. By the way, Casey, you're going to always be a Sooner. By the way, we love your dad, right? The family's back in good standing. We got you guys forever. Salute, Thompson family. Boom, come play your position. Hawkins is the guy who in the next year or two is going to be challenging JFA every step of the way. And so, by the way, we this is how we said it too. We say, hey, the quarterback position, Hawkins is probably truly the 2, but Casey gives us that security blanket where if we've got a game or two and JFA is going to be, he's got an owie, he's got to sit out. To me, it's just fundamentals and building a program the correct way. Casey's a Sooner. He's a Sooner, man. His dad's a Sooner. Great. It just made sense to bring him back home. It kills all the UT noise, all the political stuff, all of the, just the killing the noise. It makes sense. And then he's a 6-year guy, man. He's a senior. He's played in a bunch of games. He's been in big program. I think Nebraska,
Yeah.
Texas, right? I think he even had one other stopper, maybe that was his brother. But I think Venables did a good job. I want to say one other thing because I do want to apologize, and that's for Barnes. He just was not a fit in the old offense. I got a couple text messages. Obviously the comments said some stuff too, but I got a couple text messages like, excuse my candor, but they was like, Negro, you crazy. Barnes got it. So I was like, cool. I can't wait to see it. That makes me feel better because I'm a huge Barnes fan. Last year, obviously he was injured and, got confirmation that, hey man, the injuries played a heavy part into his lack of production and kind of the mental side of him not feeling good about himself. But they say he bringing that, you feel me, this year. So I just want to see him run the daylight. If he runs the daylight, I'll be excited. And if Seth's offense is a better fit for him, I do want to give Barnes his flowers. He's going to be an integral part of seeing the offense, be successful.
Yeah, he's a guy who, if I'm kind of explaining the difference between him and Sawchuk has more of that capability to dead stop, wait, and then explode. Barnes is a little more of he's got to see it develop, and then it's either put that right foot or put that left foot down and get on the backside of whoever you're trying to go opposite of. And I loved him out of high school, but
Yep.
I thought the foot was just or well, whatever was going on with him really, really hampered him, especially when you're a guy who relies so heavily on getting downhill, staying low, having that lean, and having to be decisive, right? You decide where you're going, you got to get there and explode through the hole. And if you do that, he had some plays where he showcased that. But yeah, I love to see it. Hopefully that's the case. Um, let's move on to the other side of the ball because this show is going to be we're going to really keep it tight today. We're very concise. We're going to start defensive line, DMAC, and we'll go through some of the ones people expected. Over there at the left defensive end position, you've got Ethan Downs, and then backing up Ethan, a guy who I was a huge fan of, and I even said, don't be surprised if you see him ahead of the name I'm also going to bring up, is you got Caden Woolard or PJ. Not even going to try the last name. Uh, we'll move inside. We've got Dominic Williams at the nose or Dejon Terry. And Venables did say in the press conference, the names that come first, it does matter a little bit. I think once they roll out and snap the ball against Temple, there's going to be a lot of shuffling and whatnot, a lot of trading series and everything. The right defensive end spot, you've got R. Mason Thomas. Looks good that he is seems to be a firmly entrenched starter. Trace Ford, the number 2, which is great, right? If you got a guy like Trace Ford and he's your backup going into the SEC, and then we'll talk about the inside guy who I'm going to bring up for you. If Trace Ford is your backup going into your first year at the Southeastern Conference, that is such a massive jump in depth and quality depth for this team, right? If Trace Ford a year ago or go back 2, 3, 4 years ago, he's easily your best edge player on those teams. And in this team, he's going to have trouble seeing some space. But at the defensive tackle position, DMAC, a guy who you were all about in fall camp, a guy who in the spring really showed out, a player who I thought had one of the best games in the spring game, and that is Jaden Jackson. Grayson Halton is right behind him, which is a guy who you were also big on just in terms of the speed and athleticism. But talk a little bit about what you think with Jaden, not only getting the nod, but getting the you're the guy nod. And the number 2 is a good ways down. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, listen, man, I obviously use my eyes, but also use my ears, and I shut up sometime and listen to folk who know the game more than me, and I want to know. I'm a sponge, give me the goods, and what are the attributes? And so, being an individual who's technically sound, well, before we even go there, he fulfills a need OU hasn't had in a while.
Yeah.
Like I'd probably say since Phillips. Like he's a guy you just ain't moving him. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to double team on that Willie backer with that off guard.
Yeah.
He's going to be a problem if he goes man up with the center again. I don't want to raise too much ruckus about the kid yet. But guys, go back and watch Kelly Gregg. Kelly Gregg's a guy. If you left him 1v1, he was going to whoop somebody's ass consistently.
That's a great point.
And
I like
yeah,
that.
I mean, Kelly kicked ass, man. And we all would look at him like, how? He's my height. He's got this big ass back and arms that are like 10 inches apiece. His arms are like 10 inches. Like, what is it? Like, how does he do it?
Yeah.
Jaron's built a little like that. And so strong base, smart kid, technically sound. And I think, again, with all the other guys we have, all of them are one of those, I want to penetrate, I want to try to win. Whereas Jaden's a guy who says, my job is to clog this hole up. And if you leave me 1v1, I'll beat you with hands, I'll beat that hip and step in front of you and really penetrate in one particular gap. And he does it consistently. Salute to him. Grayson's another guy, like you said, he's got the best step. Grayson's a guy. I bet you he's going to be a guy who NASCAR type front, Grayson
Mhm.
will be in there. And then obviously I just want to apologize. I was called people, you know how much hell people have been giving me about calling him Jaron Jackson. Like, damn, you
The Memphis Grizzly.
I was calling him a whole ass basketball player, you know what I'm saying? That's what happens when you're a freshman. I was pledging them, you know what I'm saying? They called me two
Yeah.
since my freshman year.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
salute. Here's what it means, Barry. It goes, I hate to sound like a broken record. It just means we have depth. It means
Yeah.
BV did it correctly. We got to show up on Saturdays. But you don't have Sears, you don't have Terry. You know, these are grown men who've been around the block, and you don't move freshmen in front of them because you're desperate. You don't do that. What you do is you say, if we have four that we semi like, five or six that we semi like across the front, you go Dominic and you go Terry. It just makes sense. Two guys who played a ton of football. Dom can play the three. Terry can play the zero. He's a bigger, stronger guy with SEC. He knows he ain't new to the SEC. He's
Yeah.
played in the SEC before. It would make sense if it were a lack of talent. So that tells you Jaden and Grayson are not in that position because we're desperate. They earned it. It's a big deal, and it needs to be respected. Um, I'm glad you brought it up, and it's something we speculated could potentially happen a month ago. So salute to those guys for showing up and earning it.
Yeah, and BV said when Jaden arrived, he was one of the most technically sound players. I thought that that was what stood out, and but there's a couple spots where I thought he would get the starting nod ahead of Stone. Stone still just had some development and fine tuning, not quite as much as a PJ or maybe even an R. Mason Thomas, but just needed the work. Jaden was so technically refined. If you guys just go watch him run drills with his hands, watch the way he plays stuff in high school. He knows where to be and how to be. And I will say, I think, and I'd love to hear if a coach verifies this, he might be the fastest on the team. And this is a big piece of playing that position. I would venture to say he might be the fastest in terms of a guy getting knocked to the ground and back up on his feet again.
Mm.
I would bet when you're doing up downs, I bet you Jaden probably has the fastest up down of that group, or if not, he's one of the fastest. And that is a huge piece. You're just a guy who's explosive. You move your hands really well. You're explosive through your hands. You're very mobile. You're flexible, and he's got some speed. We saw him run some things out to the edge in the spring game, and that's something you like to see. Moving to the linebacker position, DMAC. No surprise at Mike. You got Danny Stutzman. Followed that up with Kobe McKenzie or Jaron Canick. Then at the will spot, two names that were expected: Kip Lewis, Lewis Carter, the Lewis brothers right there. Those two guys, BV said, could be as good as any group in America. He said that in the presser, said that they could very well be some of the best backers. You've called Lewis Carter just a prototype Georgia Willie backer. He's got the explosiveness, that first step, has that nastiness to him, the intangibles, the leadership. But I want to talk real quickly about a name, and we had discussed this a hair, and that was Dason moving from Cheetah. I always had my concerns about him playing Cheetah just from playing in space. I did not think when he left Indiana that he had the feet to do anything where he's got to flip his hips, anything where he's got to backpedal, turn and run, anything where he's got to react in a split second. He just doesn't have the ability like a Dolby or a Powers, who is now entrenched in that. Shout out to Reggie Powers Sr. Big fan of the show. Shout out, man. Just thank you for all the love, the contact. He'll occasionally hit me up after a show. But talk a little bit about the move for Dason to that position, DMAC, and then we'll move to D-backs and cover special teams a little bit.
Excited about the backup position. It unfolded like we hoped it would. I'm just gonna say it like this: when Canucks your three, or your 2 point, your 2B, I guess is what we'll call it.
Mhm.
When Canucks your 2B, man, you're cooking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're cooking. You have an injury, a guy goes down, and then something happens, and Canucks still, is kind of a flipper guy versus you gotta rush the kid in. It's gonna give him a chance to be a great player for us in a year or two. You watch. Yeah, he could get recruited over because we're recruiting at a high level, but he's also going to be a guy 4 or 5 years in. He's going to really know his job. And I think the game finally slows down and he's going to be a guy who can help us potentially. And that's what you want in your program. Speaking to the guys who earned it, though, Willie position, we're in good hands. two young pups. I mean, I guess Kip is a junior, so he's not necessarily a pup. He's played 3, 4 years. But guys, Kip's earned it. He's a 3-year guy. Lewis Carter is the highest ceiling out of all the guys in that room. The
Yep.
highest ceiling out of all guys, all positions in the back of room. It's Lewis Carter. And so it'll be interesting to see him push Kip. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised in certain situations if he goes in and play Mike. Listen,
Mm,
here's the beauty about our depth chart and our skill set. We have flexibility, right? We did talk a hair about Desan playing Willie, right? And in my opinion, when they go 30 front and one of those backers comes up on the line of scrimmage, I think that's going to be Desan as that fourth guy. He'll be on a 2 point. And that's going to be scary because that's one of the things he's probably the best on the team
that's
at.
his
He's
natural position. If he
oh
plays in the
man.
NFL, that is
Oh,
what he is playing.
he's going to put on 12, 15 pounds, and he's going to go to a team like the Steelers. I don't know if they're still in the 30 front, but he's going to go to a team that's in the 30, and he's going to give you hell because his football IQ is very high. It's
Mhm.
not like he's just a rush guy, even like I'd say like an Obo, right? Obo is really a D lineman in a 34 backer's body,
Mhm.
where his intuition was to go see ball, get ball, and tackle ball.
Yeah.
Desan has the intuition like a second level defender where he can feel something going on behind him. He can sink a little bit. He can buzz the flat. So he's a guy who's going to be versatile for us. And I'm not surprised that they put him in a position where he doesn't have to be a liability. Him at Cheetah allows other offenses to scheme him into a bad predicament for us. Him at Willie Backer allows us to scheme him into a good position for us. And so just the way I see the game, just being in meetings with BV, talking to BV, you know what I'm saying? Like he hasn't changed. I still feel like I have a sense of how he wants to play the game.
Yeah.
To me, it just unfolded based upon what I saw the last 2 years, what we saw, based upon what the skill sets of the players we see are. It just makes sense, right? And seeing those guys, Danny's going to be an All-American guy going into the preseason. Kip's going to challenge him for that. Kip's going to out tackle Danny this season. You watch if they both stay healthy. Danny's going to make the splash plays. He's going to sink into somebody's going to run a double slant. He's going to shoot the gap. He's going to be an inside dogs. He's going to beat a guard and sack strip, and he's going to pick it up, or someone's going to pick it up. They're going to be in a big zone. He's going to see the over route. He's going to sink into the over, snag it. That's Danny's just got that flair to him. You know what I'm saying? In a different way than the Boz. The Boz was more so physically coming forward, kick your ass. Danny's pretty damn good in space. He's shown that he's pretty instinctual in space. Uh, the backer position and the cheetah position, one that you called, man, you called it, and I didn't even think about it, but it makes sense because it allows Desan to go to Willie backer as Powers going to cheetah. Again, another guy who can play on the second or third level makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. It gives me more confidence that the defense is going to have the versatility and the physicality to come forward and hit people. But Barry, the thing that I think BV knew was a big issue for them the last 2 seasons was backing up. That cheetah position was, when White had to play it, a liability.
Yeah.
Desan had to play it, a liability. Now you've got guys who can play it. If Sammy O, which I gotta make some phone calls. I gotta figure some stuff out. But if the light bulb goes on the
Oh,
same way Lewis Carter is a Willie, Sammy O at Cheetah.
oof. Length, the speed, the physicality. Yeah. What this depth chart shows is that they're built to play any given team any given week in the SEC, right? You're going to have to line up and then hit somebody when you're playing Alabama. You're going to see some bigger bodies against a team like a Tennessee on the offensive line, right? You've got to have some versatility. You're going to have a team like Missouri that's going 4 and 5 wide, and they see a Desan and they say we're gonna pick on that exclusively. But if you got a guy like Powers, who I would say probably has some of the best close area acceleration, right? In other words, like covering 5 yards the fastest, probably one of the best in the secondary in terms of just covering that distance as quickly as possible. And let's move to that spot, DMAC, real quick before we get out of here. Free safety, I don't think a ton of surprise, not even the or, to be honest, because you were real high on RSJ. I said he's been a guy who has really shown some significant flashes. But you've got Peyton or RSJ, you got Billy at the strong safety position. You've got Kanai or Woody, which was interesting. And then you've got Des Malone or Gentry or Jacoby over there. So touch a little bit about what you think about those guys and where everyone landed.
Safety is about what we expected. Corner, let me just interpret what corner means. We ain't baby and none of you mother suckers. I love it.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about like Woody has the seniority and you don't want to take it from him, but Woody has to take it from the guys who are more athletic than him. I freaking love it. It's championship culture, Barry. It's championship culture. You're not just letting a guy come in and say because you're the senior and you've kind of been a quality starter. Woody at corner has never been locked down. He just never has. He's a solid corner. He's gotten beaten on some plays that they didn't connect on. He's gotten beaten on some plays, and he's been solid for us. He's a guy that you're not going to play losing football with, but I don't know if you're playing Georgia in the second round of the playoffs and you want him locked up on their X receiver. I don't know if or their Z receiver for that matter. I don't know if we necessarily want that. But can I call him in the avatar.
Yeah.
He just looks different. I'll never forget. I went to the scrimmage last year and I saw Harrington and I saw Kanai. They look the same. I was like, dude, that's the same dude. Kanai is a huge guy. You see Jacoby, he's huge, right? And so I do think Gentry is a little different. I think Gentry, they're letting him know that we're not gonna baby you per injuries. Like if you don't stay healthy, there's another guy that is also the starter. And I think that's smart. And it's fair. Gentry is the guy who's probably earned the right to be entrenched, but the first thing you got to have availability. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to suit up on Saturday. So it lets the SEC know, it lets America know, and it lets the players know, like, dude, this season you got to grind. And so corner, I thought it would say Woody as the first, and then Gentry as the first. I think that lets us know Gentry's injury is something that concerns them. And I think it lets us know that Woody wasn't the best corner in camp. And damn it, Kanai got enough reps last year to show that he's got something. And he's just he's bigger, stronger, faster, longer. He's all four. Um, and so again, Barry, it's the depth chart. But I promise you this, it would not surprise me if midway through the season you see Woody playing some cheetah nickel, some six pack, some dime. He's just a guy who's a great football player. And if you got him on the third level in a Peyton Bowen type scenario or something like that, where he isn't like, I don't have any help deep, he's a plus player. I think he plays in the league. I just think he's a nickel or some type of safety, sub package safety in the NFL if he gets a cup of coffee.
Yeah, agreed. I'm with you all the way. He needs some good film at corner. He needs some great film at corner this year if that's the position he wants to play in the NFL.
Yep.
Otherwise, yeah, I think you're right. He's a plus player in a lot of those positions where he's got other guys to the outside of him, or he's got some help somewhere where he doesn't have to be fully relied on in space. Special teams, you got Keltner or Schmidt listed at kicker. We'll see how that goes. I think one of them's taking kickoff. The other one's doing field goals. I believe Schmidt's going to be kicking the field goals, if I'm right.
I think
And
it's the opposite. I think Schmidt's
opposite,
I think
that's
Schmidt's
right.
kickoff and then
He's
Keltner's
got a
gonna be
big old
kicking.
leg. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Billy Bowman, really your prime kick returner. We saw that a season ago. But a punt returner, and I'll put this down. I'm going to say it with my chest. I've said it with my chest now. Since he was recruited and since he signed, I said that Peyton Bowen is going to be the best punt returner that OU has seen, not since like a Jalen Saunders or Ryan Broyles. I am talking about Antonio Perkins level
Really?
good at returning punts. I think it was that him being named the starter when a lot of people were like, who's it going to be? Da, 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 da. Zero surprise for me. I know I can see why he's not returning kicks because he's not necessarily the straight line, kind of. He is a guy who has so much spatial awareness. DMAC, his if you're running the awareness and agility in EA, I don't know what his rating is, but he's a 99. Like just he is full go in that territory. I think he will go down as one of the absolute best. If OU has some really good players on that punt return team who know how to block, who understand angles and where to be and how to do that, man, he's a guy who can make that second and third person miss, which with punt returning, that's what you've got to be able to do. A lot of guys can shake that first guy if they're a good athlete. That second and third, and then getting to the sideline, sometimes a little tougher. I think he takes at least 3 back this season.
Wow.
I think he takes 3 back this season. Any thoughts on special teams before we wrap up today?
I just think thematically, BV is letting folks know we're here to play ball, right? He's not he's saying my best guys are going to have the football in their hands, and he's trusting his team to go out there and be a big boy heading into the SEC, right? He's not taking a second string receiver or some guy like Peyton Bowen is probably the most talented safety we have. And he's got him back there. Well, salute, right? Because you got guys like Tyron Matthew who did it. And right, when you've got a guy who can do it, guys, dang it, let the guy do it. So good stuff there. Um, the kickers, it's a wait and see. You know, Schmidt had some issues last year, so it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out this year. Um, you know, sheesh, Billy Bowen it'll be Bowman. It'll be interesting to see, how he handles kickoffs. Again, here's what coach knows. I got backups. I've got guys. RSJ is a 1A for both positions, right? Now, and then I've got other safeties coming through the fray. I do want to bring something up. People are asking about this, and I want to say this before we head out.
Yeah,
Just having I'm not an insider. By the way, guys, I am not an insider, so don't ask me insider questions. I analyze. I would say I'm more of an analyst and using my own understanding of the program and such like that. Yes, I got buddies and whatever, but I don't really bother them. I want them to coach and do their thing. uh I promise you guys, the hurry up and the rendition we saw Levy do it, uh a lot of times almost to our own demise, will be much more strategically run, where we're mixing and matching. If we're going to be hurry up sometimes, and then in the huddle sometimes, and then super warp speed sometimes, and then slowing it down with a muddle huddle sometimes, there is a plan in place to make sure we're not just obnoxiously going no huddle like we did against Okie State. I
yeah,
guess that was 2 years ago, where we
sure.
literally gave them 2 additional possessions only because we were
Was
throwing
not
the ball,
thoughtful. Yeah,
and going 13 seconds to hike the ball. um we won't be ignorant, or let's just call it dumbasses. We won't be dumbasses with the hurry up this year. And like I said before, you're just going to see so many more layers to the offense, not tricks, gimmicks, not, just layers. We're going to run power and double wing. We're going to run power and 11. We're going to run power and 12. We're going to run power bend back. We're going to run power and then power pass. We're going to run power pass with a junk route, right? A dick route, right? Everybody's going to flow one way. The tight end's going to start this way. Then run it over the other way. You're going to see some things that look like Link. But I asked a question. I said, hey, what offense that we've run in the last 25 years will this resemble the most? And the answer is the Leach principles. I
interesting.
like, why I like that?
Why?
I know that mother sucking offense inside and out.
So that
I know
means
that.
this is going to be the spot to be. I do want to ask, because we did have this question on the board, and that actually touched. I was going to ask you that on one of the board questions, was just about the hurry up, no huddle, and maybe talking about how it's going to fit with this team. Uh, Caleb Hicks listed last on depth chart. Is that more
Oh,
of a indictment on Hicks or more of a good thing for Barnes? How do you view that?
Barnes had a phenomenal. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I actually had a direct conversation about that. Barnes had a phenomenal summer, and Hicks is a guy who is an introvert. By the way, extremely talented. By the
Hmm.
way, if everybody got hurt and we had to lean on him, he could carry the load. So I just want to put that out there. But he's not a guy who the intangibles, the soft skills, the you know lift other guys up,
Sure.
and he apparently has been challenged to do that in some regards, and still is reluctant to be that kind of individual. But that is his personality in football and in classroom and in life and with family. So that's kind of who he is. I'm here to tell you, there's certain people that think he deserves to tote the rock. So I don't think there's a talent issue. It's more so if I'm a coach and I've got three options. Option one is obviously a stalwart. Option two is really good, but telling coach I want to kick ass, I want to get after it. And then option three is good, but it's more so melancholy or kind of, I wouldn't say timid, but just not assertive.
Yeah.
Right. Coach is going to err on the one who's saying, let me get a shot, let me get a shot. And so um good to have that depth. From what I hear, he likes Norman, so I don't know that he's a transfer candidate yet. I mean, the season's long,
Yeah.
but it's not a talent issue as far as I can see, and I've heard. It's more so room with some talent and his personality and versus his coach meshing, versus relative to his peers and their personalities meshing with the coach.
Yeah, I would say talent-wise, he's got it. Man, all the evaluations, all of the stuff we're seeing on film and have heard, he's got it talent-wise. That definitely seems the case. Again, football, it's a game where you have to have attitude, but you have to still play with technique, but attitude gets you so far, effort gets you so far, your ability to lead others, to play with others, to lift others up. It matters, man. It matters in everywhere. Anytime you're working with a team, that's important. I guess one little thing of note, Murray suspended 1 game, and all this confirms is that Oklahoma is indeed SEC ready because it was sanctions, recruiting sanctions. So OU is ready to play ball, man.
Whoa,
Uh,
whoa, whoa! He can't be on the sideline.
I believe he cannot be on the sideline for Temple. So it was I think 16 infractions. OU did do some self-imposed stuff, and the NCAA ruled 1 game.
Just
So
him.
just him. Yep, just DeMarco. He
Dirty
had,
dog.
some improper interactions over the offseason, but DMAC, he was recruiting, man.
Come on, babe. We got work to do. What are we
Got work
talking
to
about?
do. Yep, yep. Awesome
It means
stuff.
more. What's the stuff they say? It
It
matters
just
more.
means
Whatever the
more.
hell. Yeah, I don't believe that shit. We owe you, baby. We
There
the
you
black
go,
sheep.
man.
Don't include us. We don't want to be included. We different.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Well, Sooner Nation, we're going to get out of here. I want to thank everybody for stopping in. Go over to ouinsider.com, grab yourself a membership. We are going to keep pumping out the pods this week. Got the preview episode coming down the line. You guys get this one earlier. DMAC, any closing words on the way out?
Game week. Let's go. We don't got nothing to talk about no more, man. It's time to strap it up, walk between those white lines, and represent that interlocked OU, man. Let's go get
Let's
it.
go. Sooner Nation, thank you for listening, and we will see you soon.